Hello, it's Mr. Badley. I said I'd make some videos really just to show you how to use Fusion, and let's get to the point where you can do some basic modelling and printing. Got to say that this is not a professional tutorial to make you into great CAD designers and do it all properly. This is literally the way that I work and the way that I've kind of found is best for me personally with Fusion, and how to create objects very, very quickly. Uh, it works for me in the way that I design, but it isn't the complete professional end-to-end correct way of doing things. I do cut corners. My aim is to make printable designs quickly, and I'll take you through some of the ways in which I kind of do that. So this is your basic viewpoint on Autodesk Fusion 360. You've got toolbars across the top, you've got your browser, and what I'm going to do really is just keep with the bare basics. So once you've loaded up, this is what you'll see. It's just updated, hence that little thing at the top. And all I'm going to really cover off is these are all different modes that Fusion can run off, and we're going to do most of our stuff in model. I'm going to cover some sketches, how to create things, how to modify things. So a little bit about the window really is this is the main bit in the middle is our view window where you see your 3D objects. Your browser is literally the thing that you select everything in. So this is very important workspace. Here you've got ways of seeing different views, which we'll go through, and then at the bottom you've got some different kind of quite handy little options as you start to make things. So for those who are not familiar at all with 3D printing, I'll go through some basics. Today we're just going to make a very simple design for a robot that will look a little bit like R2-D2. Okay. So two things when I first fire Fusion up: switch origins on. When anything that's not got a light bulb on means it's hidden from view. So I'm going to click on that, and I can now see this. This is our 3 panes. Okay. So the mouse controls for Fusion, middle button allows you to pan stuff around, and literally I sit with my finger on the shift button, because if I press the shift button and pan around, I can rotate. Now between those two I can pretty much move the object to where I want to do to carry on doing designing. The third bit really important is the wheel on the mouse, which lets you zoom in and out. Now you won't see that at the moment because you've not got any objects in there, but when you zoom in and out you can pan around, and if you press the shift key it allows you to rotate things. So there are the main ways in which we move objects around in this screen. If you get completely out of kilter and you don't know where you are, at the top right hand side there's a little home button, and that will reset the view to the default position. And pretty much that's all you need. Okay, so as I said, what we're going to do is very quickly make ourselves a little robot. So the first thing we're going to do is do a typical R2-D2 body. Now I'll introduce to you then what we call sketches. Often in tutorials it will show you how to create basic shapes, but actually when you start designing you'll typically be doing those sketches. So I'm going to jump straight in with sketches. What sketches are is really a two-dimensional image which allows you to make three-dimensional objects. So our R2-D2's body is circular, so I'm going to click circle, center diameter circle. When I want to do a sketch, it's now asking me which two-dimensional plane I want to do that sketch on. You can see it flicks around. So you can do it on the X, the Y, or the Z plane. So I'm just going to select that plane there. And now immediately the view changes so I can see that plane. To draw your circle, decide where you want your center point to be, and then as you move it out and in, it allows you to select the dimensions. Okay. Normally I'm working to plans or whatever you want to do, or dimensions. So what you do is literally all I do is lift my mouse off the pad so it doesn't change the figure that's in there. I type the dimension, 40 millimeters. I hit tab, which locks it in, and now I can click OK, and now I've made a circle. So this is a sketch. Okay, so I'm going to hit stop sketch now, and you can see, I'll use my mouse button to zoom in and out, I now have a 40 millimeter circle that's been defined in 2D space on that plane. So if I highlight that circle, what we're going to do is we're going to create an object. Okay, and rather than go through all of the individual tools and show you what they do, what I'm just going to do is do the design and tell you what I'm doing as I'm doing it. So create, this is where we start to create a 3D object. An extrude, which adds a depth, and it says it adds depth to a closed sketch profile. And a closed sketch profile is effectively something that's got a full, you know, it's fully enclosed all the way around. So if there's a gap in your sketch, it won't let you select it and make it go blue. Comes up with loads of options. We're not going to do anything on these options other than start to pull that up. And as you can see, now we're creating 3D things in 3D spaces. So I'm just going to do a 40 extrusion. Same thing as I said to you before. 40, tab locks it in. Click OK. And lo and behold, you've now created your first three-dimensional object. So that is 40mm by 40mm cylinder. Okay. And sketch allows you to draw in the two-dimensional space. Create then starts to create things in that space. Now what I'm going to do is pop over to this browser window that I mentioned before, because this lets you select and understand what's been created in here. When you first turned origin on, which is the three planes, you'd put a little light bulb on, the rest of it was empty. What we've actually done is we've created a body, which is a three-dimensional object, and we've created a sketch which created the body. So if I expand those two folders, you can now see these objects in here. And literally I can turn them off and I can turn them on. So they don't disappear, they just let you select different aspects of what you're drawing and make them visible. And likewise, if I turn the sketch on, and I can turn the body off. Now, important things with sketches is that once you've extruded, once you've done something with it, Fusion very kindly hides them. They've not been deleted, they literally just need switching back on. So it's quite an important thing to remember that, because often you'll do your first sketch, you'll do your extrusion, it won't be there, it can get a little bit frustrating. Okay. Now, one of the functions, actually probably should have said this right at the beginning, but one of the things that I always turn off is this thing across the bottom. Okay. This is actually the history. It's quite a sophisticated way of being able to go back and redesign your object. But I do find the way that I work, it does all sorts of weird and confusing things, and this history thing literally stopped me using Fusion in the first days of when I was testing it. It will not allow you to cut and paste from one design to another design and all sorts of weird things. So what I do is I right click on your document settings here at the top, and I click do not capture history design, and it says that the timeline or design history will be removed, which I'm quite comfortable with. You still use the undo key, so you can still go back like you would do in traditional ones. So I just switch that off, and I've found that it's a little bit more predictable in the way that it behaves since doing that. But again, it is quite counterintuitive, I guess. You only have to do that once per design. So normally when I fire it up, I will put the light bulb onto origin so I can see the XYZ frame, and I switch off the design history. So we've got a two-dimensional object. Okay, we've got the beginnings of an R2 body. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a dome. Okay, so I'm going to introduce a few different things when we start to do that. So the first thing I want to do is I want to design a little bit of an interesting shaped dome. I'll use R5 as a kind of a bit of a inspiration. So I'm going to start with a line, and I'll show you why. I'm going to draw a line, so as you can see, we move our cursor around. We select the very top plane, and this is quite interesting now, because before we could only select this plane, the planes that were on the origins. Now we've got an object, we can select the top of that object as a drawing plane. Okay, and I'm simply going to draw a line from the center of that circle out to wherever I need it to be, just at a 0 degree angle. When you're drawing, it will always let you draw a second line, so you can either hit escape on the keyboard or you can tick that little tick box. Okay, So let me just delete that and let me show you again. So I select line. Now you'll see with Fusion it's quite clever because it's quite intuitive in that it knows I probably want to go near the circle. So when I go to the circle it locks. Pull that out, it tells me the length of the line, and it will also tell me how many degrees it is. If you want to type those in manually, pull it out to wherever you need it to, lift the mouse out, tell it you want it 45mm, tab, and I want it at 0 degrees, tab, and that now locks it. So if I click, it's now created that line for me. It wants me to do a second line, I hit escape, I now have that line. So what I've done is I've actually drawn a line on top of the body on a different plane. And the reason I've done that is I want to actually start to do the profile of a new dome. And I'll show you why we're doing that. It'll become apparent as we start to do some of the designs. What I'm going to do with this is I'll show you how we design this, and then as we do further videos it'll be a little bit more reinforcement of some of the tools, so we'll repeat as we go through. So what I need now is I need a plane that if I'm looking at the front of the dome, I want to draw on that plane right in the centre. There isn't a plane there because there's these ones here and there's one on top of here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to construct a plane at an angle. And that's the reason I drew the line, is because it needs to know where to start, hence the line. So I click on the line, and what it's actually done then is it's created a line right through a plane right through the centre of my circle at exactly 90-degree angle, which is what I want to draw. So I want to draw flat on this at the front. So I'll click OK. Okay, and then sketch and line, and I'm going to then again select that plane. Okay. So remember to move the canvas around, middle button pan, and shift and middle button allows you to rotate, and this at the top allows you to either go to a default view or you can line it up so it's a front view. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is use my mouse wheel to zoom in, and I want to get the very edge there because I'm going to start the design of the dome. So the dome I want, I'm not going to measure this, but obviously you'd have measurements and angles which you can get various plans for. Okay, and then I'll zoom out a little bit. I'm going to pan down. I'm still drawing. I'm going to guess what the particular dome looks like, and then I want to go what I want to do is finish in the exact centre of the dome with this drawing. Now notice it's not locking to where the centre is, and again what Fusion does is it allows you to train it what you want to do. So I say I want to find the centre, so that's the centre. I'm showing it where the centre is, and now you can see it starts to recognise that centre, starts to lock into it. So I'm going to do it about like that, and then when I've finished I can either hit that little green button, click, I can hit stop sketch, or I can hit escape. Okay. Now notice I can't select that because it isn't a closed sketch. So I'm going to draw some more lines. Sketch line. One thing to note also is you get better at this, you'll start to use shortcuts. So sketch line is an L. So I can literally press L if I want to start that sketching process. And I'm going to draw a line straight down to there. And then I'm going to draw a line from there back to where I started. When I did that, this here goes a little bit of a darker pink colour, which means that it's now selectable. I'll hit stop sketch. So let's have a look at what we've actually sketched. You can see now we've sketched the outline of a dome from the centre at a 90-degree angle. And the reason for that is we're going to use a function to take that and to spin it all around that circle to create a solid R5 dome. So if you click on create, because we're going to create a new object, and you'll see lots of different creations. We used extrude, which pulls a piece out. We're now going to use revolve, which revolves a sketch profile around a selected axis. Okay. So the profile we want to select is this. the axis we want to select is just this line here. And when I do that, it actually then completes the rest to say I'll spin it round at 360 degrees to create a solid object. And I'll join it. Now this operation here is quite important because anytime you're creating a new object, by default it will make it part of this other object if you have join. If you have new body, it will create a new body. So I'm going to go new body and I'm going to click OK. So when I did that, notice what happens now. I've got two bodies, so I've got the dome and I've got the actual main R2 body, and as you can see it starts to become a bit more like a recognizable robot. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple of legs to it. Instead we're printing an R2 here, so let's just go with the flow. If you were doing this properly, you'd have measurements and you'd have blueprints, but we're just going to kind of look at a bit of freestyle. So I want to now draw some legs on the side of that robot. This is a curved side, so I can't actually sketch. If I sketch a line and start to try and select that curved piece, it won't let me select it. It'll only select flat planes. Okay, so what I need to do then is add another plane to draw on that. If you look through and you hover over these, they'll tell you different types. I know I want a tangent plane, which is a plane that is tangent to a cylinder. And what that actually means is I click that, it asks me for the cylinder, I click on that. You can see what we've got now is we've got a plane that is at a 90-degree angle to that robot. Okay, so if I click top, you can see it's at that angle. I can actually drag this round like that as well, so I can put it at whatever angle I want to. I'm going to guess to try it. Actually, no, I'll just leave it where it is. It doesn't matter if it's slightly off center. I'll show you what we're going to do to do that. So I'm going to click OK. So what I've got now is I now got another plane which I can draw a leg on. Okay. So again, we'll start with the shoulder, which is obviously a circle. This is very similar to the way we did the body. What I want to do now is select this plane here because I want to draw on that new thing that I've created. Okay. So now I'm actually drawing on that plane. And again, I can teach it where the center of the object is literally by finding any lines and showing it. And then I'm going to take a guess as to where the shoulder might start. Zoom in a little bit. It's actually that red line that you can see is just part of the grid that it does show. So I'm going to actually use that middle piece there because I think that's not far off right, correct. So I'm going to do the shoulder probably about like that big. Yep. Okay. Now what that's done is you can see it's added the shoulder onto R2-D2. But that isn't quite obviously the leg. So what next thing I'm going to do is sketch a rectangle. So again, you can go through the sketches and get used to some of these tools. I'm just going to do a center point rectangle, which means I select the center of where I want the rectangle is, and then it'll grow out. And I'm going to take a guess again that we'll start it probably about there, and I'll just pull it out so it kind of goes like, it doesn't matter if I'm overlapping into. What I'm trying to do is get the right length into the circle, something like that. And then finally, what I'm going to do is some lines to do the foot. Now notice I'm not, and this is the difference probably between actually when you do proper professional CAD is you spend loads of time getting all of the, so this just is a single outline, whereas I tend to mix and match, do it a bit rough just to get what I need to get to. So now if you see, I've actually designed the leg. So I'm going to hit stop sketch. And as you can see, I've now got a sketch that is in the right place for the leg of the R2. So I'm going to highlight this to again extrude to create something solid. Now notice, because you've got different spaces, it's in multiple parts. So if you press the shift key or the control key to do multiple selections, you can select all of it like that. Once you've done that, you create an extrude and press shift and middle key just to get it to where I want to be, so I can see roughly. Pull it out to about something that looks a little bit like that. Say, I'll do it 7mm just because it's a nice round number. Hit tab to lock it in as we did before. Press enter, and there you go. Ta-da! We now have our first R2D2 leg. Okay. Now I know that that R2D2 leg is literally, virtually not touching that cylinder body. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to thicken it out on this side so it starts to merge into that body, because it'll be important when we print that it's actually attached. So what I do is I select this plane, so notice it's all gone blue, and this time I'm going to create an extrude from an object as opposed to a sketch. What that does is it allows me then to extend it to any thickness that I want to, so that it's part of that overall body. So what I'm trying to do is just get it to about there, like that. Okay. So we'll call that 3.5mm. We're going to do that just to keep it nice and solid figures. Tab. And once it's at 3.5mm, click OK. And there you go, we've got a leg. Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to do this same leg on the other side. Okay. Now I've cocked up a little bit there, because when I created this leg, what I actually created was I didn't select that it was a new body, I selected join, so now it's actually just created one big unit, which means I'm going to what I was going to do is copy and paste this leg and stick it on the other side. I can't do that. So to get around that, again, I'll show you a couple more features. If I first of all click on inspect, I want to see how wide this leg is. 10.5mm, which is a 7 plus 3.5 that we extruded last time. So I know it's 10.7mm. So I'm going to create another leg here. I'm going to create extrude, and I know that I want 10.5mm. Now if you see here, this is the issue that I did last time, is I left it at join, which means it joined the previous body to create one object. I'm going to create a new body, and what that will do is it will create that second leg. There you go. It's now in the right place. And then what we're going to do is going to move that to where we want it to be. So right click, move, and now this allows us to actually move the body around. The important thing with this is you typically move a body in these arrow spaces. However, these are always by default lined up with where the origins are, which obviously for us gives us a bit of a problem. So I'll just go through that movement again. So select the body that you want. Again, you can select this on the browser, right click and hit move, and this comes up. So the first thing I want to do is to move it exactly parallel with the other leg. So this set pivot is a really useful tool in all of these move dialog boxes. Click on that, and what you can do is you can choose the pivot point where you're going to actually use to move the object. Click on it, and then you click that tick box, and now as you can see I've realigned it so it's perpendicular. How far do I want to move it? I'll move it from there. So again, you can either measure this and you can do it by design. For the purpose of this, I'm going to do this completely freehand nearly. So I'm just going to move it 24 because it looks about 54, which looks about right. And then when that's okay, I'll click OK. So now I've got the foot in there. So again, if I press the middle key to pan, I press the shift key and the middle key, I can now see this as an object. So what I've actually got is I now have two bodies, because I've cocked it up a little bit. One body which consists of the head, the body and the other leg, and the second body which consists of that leg. So the final thing that I'm going to do to make this overall robot is I'm going to create a single body out of all these parts. Under modify, combine, which starts to link individual bodies into one. Highlight that body, highlight that leg, click OK. Okay, so there you go. We now have a very basic robot shape. And I mean, that, you know, it's very quick design, and obviously what we'll do is in the coming videos I'll show you a little bit more sophisticated ways of doing this. Now, what's important with the browser is as you go through the browser, you kind of keep the organization of your parts and things like that up to date, and you name them. So now we've done this, we'll just call this robot. That. The other rather unconventional thing I tend to do is I tend to just delete the sketches when I've used them, because what I do is I'm producing the bodies, we cut, we slice, we dice. I constantly work in bodies, and I just delete all of the other stuff. If you're doing it by the book, you would have all of those sketches. The sketches are linked to the bodies. There's all sorts of weird and wonderful things you can do. But what I want to take you through is just the way that I do it, because I find it very simple and very quick and very easy and intuitive to work with. Right, once we've got R2 or R5, or you want to call it like this, the next thing I want to do is I'm going to cut this for 3D printing, because we're virtually now at the point we've got a single body that I can print this. But if I print it like this, I'm going to have a load of support under here. However, if I print it on any different angle, I'm going to have supports and overhangs. So the neatest way of printing this object is perhaps if I slice it directly down the middle here, and then print the two objects separately. So I'll show you what I mean by that. Now what I want to do is introduce you to these little things at the bottom. What these do is, where I press the shift key and did an orbit, or I press just the middle key to move things around, I was using different tools. So you can see it selects the little hand pan at the bottom, and likewise if I press the shift, it then selects the orbit, which is there, so it gives you an indication of what you're actually doing. If I roll in and out, I'm using the zoom key, and if I click on fit, it fits it to the screen size that you want to. So they're quite little handy ones. The one that I really like is this look at, because what this allows you is to put any particular space or any particular face, and makes you look at it full on. So if I click look at and then the side of that leg, you can see there it then brings that, so that's my main viewing point. So what I'm going to do is chop this in half. So you know when you've got parts that are too big for your print bed and you want to chop them down, this is the same process. Show you how to do it. This can be done on STLs, which I'll cover off in another video at some point. So again, I'm going to sketch line because I want to tell it where to cut. I'm going to cut it, I'm going to draw the line along this leg. And what I'm going to do again is just go around the circle till it locks in the middle. There you go, click on it. And I'm going to pull it down at 90 degrees. Tab it to lock it in, tab it to lock it in, and click it. Hit escape in this case, or however you want to stop sketching, and then hit stop sketch. And what we've done is we've drawn a line here, bang in the middle of that leg. That's where we're going to cut through. So the command for that is modify split body, and what it's asking you there is what body do you want to split. This one. What's the splitting tool that you want to select, and I just want that line. Now it doesn't matter the length of that line, because it will always split the whole body unless you untick the extend splitting tool, when it won't split the body, but I very seldomly do that. So I click OK, and what I end up with now is actually two bodies. So you can see in my body list here I've got robot 1, robot 2. So if I hide robot 1, sorry, robot and robot 1 should I say. If I hide robot, you can see that's half of it, and if I hide that one and do that one, you can see the other half of it. So what that's actually done is it's let me get this ready for printing. So theoretically I can print this flat surface, no overhangs. I can print the other side, flat surface, no overhangs, and then I can glue the two together. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just show you what I tend to do in preparing for this when you're looking at 3D printing. The first thing I do is I actually I've tried to create a gap in between the model, and the reason for that is when you print, the filament tends to just slightly overhang on models, So I always press and pull so I get a bit neater tolerance. I tend to leave a 0.3mm gap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend that by, pull that by minus 0.15. So that's now taking a tiny slither, 0.15mm, off that model. I'll bring the other face in, the other body in, and I'm going to do the same to that one. So right click, press pull, and I'm going to take minus 0.15, which is remembered. Okay. So now, if I look at that, you can see there is a gap. That gap just means that your tolerances when you're looking at stuff and when you're building stuff will be there and it'll all match up. Experiment, but I tend to find it's 0.3 to 0.4 depending on what you're actually printing. So I'm going to look at the legs again so you can see it really straight on. Now one of the tools that I do use a lot of is inspect, and this is really just to check that I've done the right thing, because it lets me measure between any distances. So I can measure between that distance and that distance just to make sure, yep, it's 0.3, I'm happy with that. Okay, so that all makes sense up to now. The second thing I'm going to do, and you don't obviously won't need to do that with this model, is I'm going to put some holes in it so that we make sure that overall the robot is aligned. And I think you've probably seen if you've printed anything that I've done, that I tend to use filament to align stuff. So sketch circle, I'm just going to make a 2mm hole which will allow me to put 1.75mm filament in there. So I'm going to sketch on that face, click. Again, let's just teach you where the middle is. I'll probably do it on that line there, why not? And lift the mouse up, 2, tab, locks it in, click. I now have a 2mm hole there. I don't have a 2mm hole, I have a 2mm sketch. Go back down again, oops. Go into circle. Where is it? Circle. Center point diameter. Teach it where I want to line it up to. Pull it down. Click where I want it to. Lift the mouse up. 2, tab, and click. And then hit stop sketch. So what I've got now is I've got 2 circles with a reasonable distance apart. These are going to be filament holes. So I'm going to highlight that one, move a little bit further down, zoom in, press the shift key and highlight this second one. And then I'm going to right click and I'm going to press and pull. Press and pull and extrude are very similar, so don't worry too much about them. There is subtle differences which I can cover off later. So this allows me to extrude. Now if you press and pull backwards or you extrude into an object, you'll see it goes red. And what it's actually doing, let me just turn it around a little bit, is it's actually making a hole. If you pull it too far, you'll make a hole in the wrong side of your model, which you probably don't want to do. So what I'll tend to do is I'll do a 5mm one for that one, maybe. Minus 5mm. Tab to lock into place, and then click OK. There we go. Now notice what I said is once you've extruded from a sketch, it tends to hide it. You can see here it's hidden. So if I click the light bulb, that sketch will come back. Now what I want to do is repeat that onto the other model, the other body. So I'm going to hide that body and bring this body back. Okay. Now same thing, that. Press the shift key, highlight both of those, right click, press pull, and I'm going to pull that back another 5mm. For it to be deadly accurate, I should actually pull in that back at 5.3mm, because you can see I'm actually sketching from where that other body is, so it's taking into account that gap. I'll tell you what, let's be accurate. 5.3, tab, okay. And now that will produce your second hole. So as I said to you before, I tend to delete sketches as I go through. And what you've got effectively there is a printable small robot. The only bit you've got to do now, what I tend to do, is name them however I want to name them. I've got robot A and robot B. Let's put them both in there, and literally then right click, save as STL, keep your defaults, click OK, and then you've got robot A and robot B. So I'm just going to save these in a STL folder. Yep, they're overwriting some one that I did before, so don't worry about that. Save as STL, OK, save, yep. So now both of those exist in my STL folder. Scroll right down to the bottom and you can see robot O and robot B. So what I'll do is I'll quickly go into my slicer. So let's fire up Simplify 3D. Just just so you see the whole process really. In true Blue Peter form, here's one I prepared earlier. So import robot A, import robot B. Notice the orientation is pretty much whatever it was in Fusion. So in Simplify, edit, place surface on bed. You can rotate it around in Fusion so it appears flat on the bed. I tend not to do that, which I'm sure annoys everybody, but it's just quicker. Place that on bed, center and arrange, and there you go. I mean, you print that up, put it together, and what you've got then is a small R5D4 robot. So hopefully that was useful. I wanted to kind of take you from end to end, just so you started to get a good feel for it. Well, let me just quickly recap. Okay, so the first most important thing is the 3D workspace. Middle button lets you move stuff around. Shift and middle button allows you to pan round, and the wheel lets you zoom in and out. That's really important. If you lose your way, if you hit the little house button in the top right hand corner, it will reset it, and likewise you can look at individual views. Okay. The browser window is where it contains all of your objects, all of your sketches, everything that you're actually doing as you're going through and making things. So this is typically where you work to manage and select your designs. And what we covered off was sketches. You sketch on individual planes, and they are flat surfaces in the 3D space. We touched on create, and this is about creating new objects. If you remember, we extruded to create cylinders, and we revolved to create the actual top dome. Okay. Modify lets us modify existing bodies, and that we use them particularly for combine and split body today. And then what we did is we used construct, which lets us put planes in different places so that we can add the legs on and all of it, add the head on, etc. And finally we used inspect, which lets us measure certain points within Fusion 360. And using a combination of all of those kind of things, we created this. So hopefully that kind of gives you an introduction. What I'll go do next time is I'll show you how we make a R4 dome. It's not something I've done before, so I thought it'd be quite useful to go through the creation of the R4 dome, and I'll show you again all of the tools that I tend to use to do that, and how we build up from the basic dome shape and then how we start to hollow it out and add detail. So hopefully that was useful. So I'll just keep adding to these videos. If there's anything that you want to see, or any particular areas that you kind of want to dig into, or questions, then by all means stick them on the Patreon page, drop me an IM, whatever you want to do, and I'll see if I can kind of accommodate them and give you a little bit of kind of tailored feedback on some of the questions, and solve some of the problems that you guys might be having as you wrestle through this. Okay, so as always, happy printing. Continue with the R2D2 building, and I'll update you on the next video. Speak to you soon. Cheers.